Captain Midnight.
Red One is a truly terrible movie. It sees Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Santa Claus's head of security team up with Chris Evans as Boston Ryan Reynolds as they try to track down J.K. Simmons' Santa, who has been kidnapped by a witch played by Kiernan Shipka from Mad Men. It's extremely paint by numbers, and mostly plays out like an unholy fusion of Men in Black and every bad family Christmas movie you've ever seen. The truth is, though, that alone would probably not be enough to get me to want to talk about this movie in a video. I mean, there's a lot of bad films out there. This one isn't even on the usual beat of kind of what I cover, so why bother giving it such a hard time? Well, as goofy as this might sound, I haven't been able to stop thinking about Red One. Not because of the film itself, the actual content of which I will probably forget by this time next week, but because of what it says about the Hollywood studio landscape of today. I really wanted to get into that here. Before I do, it's been a while since I've mentioned my comic book, Binary Sea. I'm really proud of it and how the second issue is coming together, even if, I admit, it is taking a little longer than I had hoped. But that means there's never been a better time to check out our first issue, which you can buy or get through Kindle Unlimited using my link in the description. It's currently sitting at 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon, which I'm really proud of. And if you like pirates or sci-fi or both, check it out. If you review it, I may just read your review in a future video. Alright, so one movie I could not help but think about while watching Red One was Dr. Dolittle. No, not the Robert Downey Jr. one, though they both do feature a talking polar bear. Not even the Eddie Murphy one that I liked as a kid. I'm talking about the 1967 musical version. Mostly forgotten today, if this version of Dolittle is remembered, it's for almost bankrupting 20th Century Fox and being a huge critical failure. And also kind of showing how easy it was for a big studio like 20th Century Fox to really lobby the Oscars back in the day, as it was nominated for a ton of awards and everyone knew no one really liked it. Critics, like the one at the Chicago Reader, said things like, "It's so clumsy and pounding that taking a child to it might be grounds for a visit from family services." In the years since its release, this Dr. Dolittle, along with other flops of the 60s like Cleopatra, have come to represent a very particular moment in Hollywood, when the old studio system, which had been so successful and genuinely beloved for around half a century, showed itself to be on its last legs. To oversimplify a bit, it put out film after film with bloated budgets that were met with scorn or, even worse, indifference. A Hollywood that had fallen out of step with the general public and no longer understood its taste. I'm sure most of you know what happened next. Films like Bonnie and Clyde and Easy Rider helped usher American movies into the new Hollywood era, giving way to many beloved directors, a lot of which are still around today. And maybe it's a bit much to compare all of that to a movie where Dwayne Johnson saves Christmas, but as I sat there, watching a polar bear and The Rock do the exact kind of MCU-light dialogue that's becoming increasingly grating in movies to me, I couldn't help but think about it. It just feels like a movie designed to appeal to everyone, to the point where I think many will find it completely repellent. It's a film that's so derivative of so many we've already seen, and includes all the expected sappy family holiday movie cliches, but also I don't think it has an ounce of, Christmas spirit. Like, I feel kind of dumb saying that, but I watched this movie, right, where Santa Claus is basically a CEO who works in tangent with an intelligence agency for mystical beings, which hold people at shady government black sites, and he employs a deadly security force. And I get all of this is the gimmick, but it's hard to picture a whole family gathering around every holiday season to watch this just completely soulless movie. Not helped by the fact that Red One is just really ugly. It's shot like an insurance commercial. According to Collider, Red One was originally intended to go straight to Amazon Prime, which makes a lot of sense. It definitely feels like a straight-to-streaming movie, which makes Dwayne Johnson's comments about wanting it to be in IMAX theaters after seeing Oppenheimer even more funny, honestly. And if that was the case, that this movie, with a $250 million budget, was truly just supposed to go to Prime, I think it makes Red One even more emblematic of the failures of this particular era of studio filmmaking. It was a movie made around the time that these non-Netflix studios were still pretending that releasing big-budget movies with big stars right on their streaming services was a good idea, and not, a disaster that buries the vast majority of those movies right out of the gate, never to be heard from again. Whether it was Mark Wahlberg in Infinite on Paramount Plus or Tom Hanks in Greyhound on Apple TV, both of which, by the way, are a lot better than Red One, but which far less people have heard of because of the disastrous release strategy that studios were using a few years ago. So what we're left with is a movie on an IMAX screen that seems shot for Amazon Prime and scripted for the Disney Channel. And alright, I am being really hard on the film and the way its entire creation seems almost birthed out of a focus group, but do I have anything positive to say? Yes, actually. There's a section of the film where The Rock and Chris Evans go to visit Santa's evil brother Krampus and find themselves in a castle full of monsters and ghouls.
Little green ghouls, buddy!
And it is easily my favorite part of this movie. Really, seeing all this detailed monster makeup just put me in a great mood. Like if Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a bigger budget. I love those guys. Makeup team on Red One, great job. Now, sadly, it did just bring into stark relief how bad the effects are in the rest of the film. I doubt I'll have the clip of it to show, but there's this North Pole vehicle chase where Johnson is facing down the guys who kidnapped Santa, and it is just unbelievably clunky and ugly, not helped by the fact that the movie's design for the North Pole city itself is a real eyesore. Now, Red One's director, Jake Kasdan, has directed things that I've liked in the past. Walk Hard, his Walk the Line parody film from the 2000s, The TV Set, which I always thought was an underrated little dramedy starring David Duchovny, and maybe most importantly, at least to me, 5 fantastic episodes of Freaks and Geeks. He also did that Jumanji reboot a few years ago, also starring The Rock, and people liked that one. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it is definitely better than Red One. And honestly, though I maybe shouldn't be cutting a very financially successful director this much slack, I kind of feel bad for Kasdan a bit, or at least I can sympathize with him. He seems like a guy who wanted to make studio comedies like Walk Hard, but he got into that game right as it was going away. By the mid-2010s, that reliable comedy theatrical hit like 40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad, or Bridesmaids was just on its way out. Big releases have really flopped. I mean, Judd Apatow's last movie also went straight to streaming. I think it's tough out there to be a big comedy director in a way that's almost unprecedented in the history of Hollywood. There seems to be pressure on studio comedies now to be comedy plus something else, like a high-concept action movie. And I think that's what leads us to a movie like Red One. Comedies don't think they can just be comedies anymore. Red One seems especially indebted to what it thinks people like about superhero movies. Like, The Rock's special power in this is just Ant-Man. He just straight up does Ant-Man gags in fights. It also has that superhero movie thing where all the fighting is amped up to 11, so everyone tends to feel kind of invulnerable. An evil snowman bounces Chris Evans, who, by the way, is just a normal human man in this, off of concrete in a way that seems like it should just shatter his spine. It doesn't look good either, and he just kinda gets up and it's never mentioned again. Now, I understand it's silly to complain about realism in a movie like this, but taken as a whole, it's just hard for me to get across how mechanical it all feels, how completely devoid of any understandable human behavior it is. They try to anchor it emotionally with this absentee dad subplot for Chris Evans, but it doesn't work at all because it's so rushed and they're just given so little room in the film that it feels like an awkward photocopy of every 90s Christmas movie with this exact subplot. And honestly, give me Jingle All the Way over this every time. In the end, Red One is a great example of everything that seems to have gone wrong in contemporary studio filmmaking. It's very expensive, and it looks terrible. It's an action film, a Christmas picture, and a lightly crass comedy all at once, and it's not particularly good at any of them. Red One seems like the product of a lot of trends that now feel exhausted and at the end of their line. And if there's any luck, like Dr. Dolittle before it, it will become a signifier for everything that was wrong with this era of Hollywood movies before the film industry is able to turn the page to something new.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.